Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. While you're waiting with me, think of one blessing that you have in your life and say Alhamdulillah for it. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Qari'a Sumayya, may Allah bless all of you. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dr. Qali is in the house, mashallah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. 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 Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Qali.
Wa alaikum assalam, مريم. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm so honored to be speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking time from your extremely busy schedule, saving people's lives to have a conversation. May Allah bless you so much.
You're so kind. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let me just introduce you, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Rasulillah. It's such an honor to have Dr. Qali with us this morning, mashallah. She's a trauma care surgeon, international speaker. She's the founder of Defiance Academy and also a master class taking up space, mashallah. A co-host for a podcast on the professional Muslim woman, and mashallah, mother of 6. It is so many different things in your life that is an inspiration for anybody who hears about all that you do. I would love to hear about your experiences in all these different areas of life. You've also published papers. You've done so many different things. And specifically with regards to your job as a trauma surgeon, you've seen so many different things and have experienced so much. So I would love for us to learn from you today about your life, about how you maintain hope and tawakkul and trust in Allah despite everything that you see, witness, and go through, and what advice you have for us in our own journeys to the Quran and our own journeys in life.
Thank you, Mariam, for having me, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I get tired just hearing about it. But yes, it's a lot. But I think, in my journey in getting into my field of trauma, one of the things I learned is the importance of time management, right? All those things taken together sound like a lot, but in reality, I have a lot more free time than you would think, because over the years, I had my kids when I was in training. So the toughest part of my journey was residency, and that's when I had my kids. And that was when I was basically forced to manage my time, to be able to, I don't like the concept of doing it all, because nobody ever does it all. We have networks, we have families, and we have a support system. So that's how I do it. I have support, I have time management. But how I came into trauma and the how tawakkul got me here, if you had told me about, 10, 15 years back that, I would be doing what I'm doing today, it would be very hard for me to believe, because, the main thing that I've heard through my training is the fact that this, where I am today, was impossible, right? From within my own community, from within my own family, it was, are you going to be forced to give up the hijab? Are you going to be forced to give up on your dreams of having kids? And so they kind of deterred me away from pursuing surgery because they didn't want me giving up, things that I really cared about. And so when I went into, college and I was a pre-med and going into medical school, all the things that they've said were proven true, right? I was basically told that, as I was applying to medical school, that the hijab wasn't going to be, accepted, and that if I wanted to be a surgeon, that this would be something that I would have to compromise. And sadly, this came from a Muslim physician, a Muslim woman that, I met for the first time. She was the first Muslim physician that I've met. She wasn't a hijabi, and she basically said, this is not going to work.
Oh. Wow.
So,
and you're wow, subhanAllah, I can only imagine how that must have impacted your, just hearing that.
Yeah, I almost gave up on my on pursuing medicine because of that. Because my journey with the hijab was a long one, and it was one of those things that deep down inside I knew that that's how I wanted to practice my deen. And growing up, the people that were most vocal about it, that were forcing it on me, were people who didn't practice the hijab. Uh-huh. So as a kid, you get those mixed messages, and it kind of steers you away. But in high school, when I started thinking about my future and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to become, the hijab was always a part of that vision. So it just stuck with me, and I held on to it. And I said, as soon as I started wearing the hijab, that's where my confidence started coming out. I was more outspoken as a hijabi than when I wasn't wearing a hijab. So I knew it was a part of who I am. And so because of that, I almost gave up on pursuing medicine, because they said, if this is going to be a compromise, then it's not something that I'm willing to compromise. Uh-huh. And so after that, I went to college, and I looked at a whole bunch of other things, and I did research, considered PhD, and I was working in a lab, and just doing lab work day in and day out. I had, it just wasn't satisfying for me. So I said, no matter how hard it's going to be, I'm going to try. What's the worst that can happen? They're going to say no, right? So I mean, that's all we could do. We do our best, and let Allah decide the rest. So I resigned from the lab that I was working on, and I said, I'm going to put my focus on getting ready for my MCATs and applying to medical school. And the principal investigator of the lab, who had written me letters of recommendation, got mad that I was not going to spend another year providing free labor in his lab, and took away his letter of recommendation and threatened to call the schools that I was applying to tell them that I was unreliable and that I should not be accepted to any medical school.
That is so horrible. How did you process that? What did you do?
Oh man, it was a very low point. I was a junior. I think it was my second year. So I did 3 years of college. My second year, I think I was like 19 or 20, and it was crushing. It was, you're when you're dying, your life flashes before your eyes. My entire career flashed before my eyes. I was like, I'm never going to make it in medicine. And it was just like crying and just, scared. This is a very powerful person threatening a 19, 20-year-old. Yes. And I had no other mentors to talk to. And it was right after 9/11. So it was in a campus in Texas. It was UT Austin. It was a campus where there were like really, really racist things happening all the time. So I didn't feel safe on campus. I didn't even live on campus. So I just, got all my emotions out, cried over it. And then finally, it just snapped for me. And I said, you know what? He's a mere human being, right? If I am meant to go to medical school, if it is written for me, if Allah has willed for me to go to medical school and become a doctor, become a surgeon, it's going to happen. If it's not meant to be, if it was not written for me, then he is just a tool in Allah's arsenal that is being used to get in my way because I'm not meant to do it.
Wow. Subhanallah.
So that gave me, peace that he doesn't have power. He doesn't have power to change my future. Wow. He's just a human being. And I washed my face. I prayed. I went and, did watch TV and ate some food. And that change in perspective really guided me, because I was like, I put my focus on studying for my MCATs. I applied to the schools that I wanted to. I met a really nice dean who gave me a scholarship, and the rest is history.
SubhanAllah. But how did you even get to that mentality, like that perspective in that moment of legitimate oppression? Like, how did you think that? Like, what were you doing to already have that as your mentality?
Because I got to a point where I was powerless, right? I had zero power. I could not report him. I volunteered to work in his lab. He wasn't obligated to write me a letter of recommendation. If he wanted to take time, out of his day to ruin my career, it was his prerogative, right? I had no proof of any of the calls that he made or any of the emails that he sent. So I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing I could do. And what do we do as Muslims when we have absolutely nothing we can do? We rely on Allah. So I was like, subhanallah, if I'm not meant to get this, get on this path, then it's not written for me. And this is just a man that is just being used as a tool to get in my way.
And Allah.
Like, he doesn't have the power. He does not have the power to change my course.
It's so powerful. Yeah, I'm so sorry to cut you off.
It's okay. It's okay. It was just, I think we give people more power than they actually have. And that's one thing I learned from that is no human being has the power to change anybody's future, right? They can impact it. They can, they can influence it, but they don't have the power to change. They are just instruments that Allah uses to change our courses, right? And so that perspective just really, shifted everything for me. And I said, you know what? Subhanallah. Tawakkal ala Allah. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. That's it. And I just, kept going. And alhamdulillah, when it happened, that was the moment that I changed how I approach difficult situations, right? Like, we let things crush us and demoralize us and, completely have us give up on our futures, especially when we're put in a situation where we have zero power. And from then on, it was just like, you know what? I've been to the bottom. I've been, at a point where I saw my career flash before me. It's going to happen again. And it did. It happened again and again and again and again. And every single time it was, okay, you know what? I'll leave it to Allah.
SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. Having that perspective is so grounding, and knowing that you are not giving power to someone over you. Instead, that power is all to the all-powerful. I can only imagine how much of a compass that has been internally for you and for anyone who can take that as our perspective. How have you seen that kind of approach play into your life when you've been in situations where, in your work as a trauma surgeon, where you maybe felt like something devastating or something difficult that you've come across, and of knowing that Allah has all power in every situation, but you also have a role to play. How has that played out for you?
So that has helped me, stay humble as a surgeon. So one of the things you'll see when you meet a lot of surgeons is we all have a big head, right? We all have egos, and we do some really cool stuff. I mean, we have patients who come in, their heart stopped because they've bled to death. We can open their chest. We can do CPR with our hands, like on their heart, direct. It's called open cardiac massage. We can bring them back to life, right? After they've been dead and had no pulse and no heartbeat for minutes. So it's SubhanAllah. I mean, it's fascinating things that we can do, and it's really easy for that to really go to your head and make you feel like you are a gift to humankind, right? That you can do it all, and nobody, can say anything to you. And I've worked with people that are like that, and I've trained under people that are like that. And one case always, grounds me. I had this young lady, she was, I think, in her 20s, a really bad car accident, broke everything. She had multiple surgeries. So she was sedated. And finally, when she woke up, she realized where she was and what had happened. And last thing she remembered was she was in a car with her kid. Oh. And so the first thing, she starts panicking and screaming and saying, "Where's my son? Where's my son?" And I worked with this surgeon who, went up to her and basically, knocked on her forehead and said, hey, you, I saved your life. Okay? Be grateful. And then just walked off. Right.
And literally speechless. Subhanallah.
And that's what surgery does. Because we do these, life-saving things, it just creeps in that you have all this power that other people don't, and it really gets to you, and you lose that compassion for patients. And at that time, I think I had 3 kids. I think it was my 4th year, and as a mother, as soon as she woke up and started panicking, I felt that panic. And I went to her and I said, "Your son," we talked to the other hospital, "Your son's fine." And I stayed with her. The team kind of went on. I stayed with her. And just like the tears of joy coming from her, even though she's broken everywhere and is in pain, just, even like without our, yes, we can do so much without our scalpel, but our compassion and how much we care for patients does a lot more than we think. And we have patients who come in, awake, talking, not unstable, and then they die, and we can't explain why, right? And then we blame each other for that, and everybody says, "Well, we did the best we could. It was just, they point fingers and blame others." But one thing that has always stayed with me is that all the knowledge that we have, all the things that we're capable of because Allah, gave us an opportunity to create that knowledge, right? Things that there are a lot more things that we don't know, right? And so if someone comes in and they're dying, if it's not their time, it's not their time. Regardless of what I do, if it's not their time to die, it's not their time to die. But if it is their time, if it's written that it's their time to go, I could be the best surgeon in the world and I can't save them because it's their time, right? And so I think, when I'm there and someone comes in, Allah, put me in that position to help this person, right? And they're going to survive because it's not their time.
Right. SubhanAllah.
But I think we lose sight of that, because we do all these, amazing things and, on the, things that are on the cutting edge, we lose focus of the fact that we're only human, and there's only so much we can do.
Absolutely.
Right? And losing that humility, I think puts us, on the other extreme where we feel like, we're a gift, and that our gifts should be, everybody should kneel down to us. And we lose compassion. We lose that bedside manner of truly caring for patients. We don't care just with our scalpel. We care with our compassion and our words. And so I think having that faith in Allah and Allah's will just made me retain that a little bit more, I'd like to think.
SubhanAllah, it's very beautiful to hear about how when you have an internal compass of recognizing that you are not the end all be all, the way that impacts the way that you interact with patients and other people in general. And, of course, there are so many stories of surgeons who are so caring and so loving, but there are also so many situations, not just in general, where someone thinks they are the reason for the existence of all people. And there are moments that really humble you and allow you to realize that you are literally nothing if it wasn't for God using you in this way. how have you found specific verses in the Quran or general messages from the Quran related to tawakkul and related to, just like putting your everything, giving it all up for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just giving it all to Allah? How have you seen that actually play out in your life as maybe a mom or as a student or as a doctor? You've given us such beautiful experiences, as beautiful anecdotes of it humbles you and lets you realize that it's only Allah who's in true power and you're just a conduit. But what about in terms of like your own personal belief, or not belief, but life?
So that has come into play a lot in actually sustaining me through training and helping me get through it. So I got married right before I started my intern year. So I got married in May and I started my residency like at the end of June. And so my intern year, you keep your head down and you just work. And I was in a program where it's very male dominated. And 3 months into the residency, I find out I'm pregnant with my first one.
Allah.
And so I sit with my program director and I tell him, I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a kid 9 months from now. I need to, change around my schedule. And he says, it's impossible. It's never been done. It's never going to be done. So don't waste your time. And he actually, I think at some point was starting to look for people to take my position. And he said, go into internal medicine or family medicine, something more, family friendly, or take the year off, do research. You need to reevaluate your priorities. So wow. Basically, yeah. And so I said, why is that? And he's like, the last person to get pregnant in our program was a third-year resident, and I'm still waiting. And that was years ago. So he said, nobody ever comes back. I was like, what is the maternity policy? I was like, what maternity leave policy? We've never had anybody who had children and came back. So I said, okay. So I came out of, it was this feedback session that we had where he started off with, everybody loves you. You're doing great work. You're a great intern. Why don't you quit? Because you're a mother now. So I left, and it was just distressing to hear from, the leader of your department, your program director, to tell you to quit, that this is not for you because you happen to be, carrying a child. And so it kind of crushed me, and I kind of felt like as I kept going, that I was being put, the spotlight was being put on me to I was getting asked the difficult questions in front of everybody, as a way to prove that I wasn't studying because, I was too busy planning a family and this and that. And so I said, okay, all right. I just, did what I could. I studied. I kept going. I had my kid. I had to go on maternity. I had to go on bed rest for a few weeks because I had sciatica, really, really bad sciatica, because we're always up, running around, operating, standing for 10 hours and whatnot. And so 4 weeks later, I come back to work.
SubhanAllah, that was so fast. MashaAllah, may Allah bless you.
That was way too fast. I would not recommend it. And so I came back and he's like, oh, you're back. I wasn't expecting you to be back. And I said, where did you want me to go? Last year we created the policy. We borrowed it from our OB-GYN colleagues and created a maternity leave policy. It was just basically our vacation and sick time. So I was like, I took my time off. I came back and I just kept going. And then 6 months later, I was pregnant with my second one. And he was like, that's it. You're done. He said, that's it. You're done. And basically wrote me off, that I wasn't I wasn't going to complete this program. So, and then I noticed that when I would scrub in with,
Oh, it's just so amazing to me that despite the fact that you came back, you'd created a policy, you showed him that back, he still had the same attitude.
Yep. And so I said, okay. So the second time he said, you're that's it, you're done. So wrote me off. People that I would be working with, attendings that are supposed to be teaching me, would basically, it's like, oh, it's a waste of time for us to teach you because you're not going to be a surgeon. You're done, right? And so I basically had to sit down and say, you know what? It's hard being in a program where you have zero support, and I find this out later when I'm graduating, that my first year, in addition to all of this going on, they had a meeting in the education committee where they basically said they were going to ask me flat out, take off your hijab. This is not the image that we want for our program.
Wow.
Yeah. So all this is going on. Yes. So I find this out later. Luckily, they had somebody in the room to say, guys, you're violating her civil rights. You can't do that. But those were the conversations that were being had, right? Not only was I being, pushed out because I chose to be a mother, they were having conversations about, me disavowing an important part of my religious practice, right? And so, this whole inclusion, diversity, none of that was happening, let alone supporting me in coming back and, getting my training. So I sensed a lot of this. So it was hard going through a program where the support of the people who are teaching you is essential to your development, right? My professional development and my attainment of surgical skills and the care of patients is dependent on these very people who are trying to look for ways to push me out of the system. And so I just prayed and I said, you know what? I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to push as much as I can. I'm going to take responsibility for my own education, right? Because nobody else is pushing it or investing in it as much as they should. I remember being in an operating room with a surgeon, and I was asking him all these questions, and he would just cut me off and either not answer or just answer with one or two words. And I see him in the operating room with one of my colleagues, and he's teaching him all of these cool things, and it was heartbreaking. And so I bought all the books and I read on, my bed rests and maternity leave time. And when I would go back, they would put me to the test, and, we have this thing called pimping. It's where, you're presenting a patient or a complication or whatever, and you're presenting it to a whole bunch of people, and the attendings ask you really hard questions, and you're supposed to answer. And if you get it wrong, they taunt you and they call you names, and it's very toxic. It is very toxic. But I would get up there, and they would ask me these ridiculously hard questions that even some of the attendings didn't know. Wow. And it, so I could tell, there was a target on my back. And so I said, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm relying on you to see me through. Right. And I think that the fact that, yes, they're there, they're trying to get in my way. They're trying to, push me out. But at the end of the day, whether I make it or not is up to Allah. And complete reliance on His guidance is what sustained me.
SubhanAllah. There are so many times that I think really many of us would just think, okay, maybe this is a sign from Allah. Maybe He's trying to tell me that I shouldn't be in this space. But you really kept working and proving that you were not just worthy of being there, but you were on top of everything that they expected you to do, and even more than that.
Yeah. So it was funny, and some of these people they have this cognitive dissonance of not realizing what they're saying and what they're doing. So at one point, so this whole time I'm being told, quit, right? And I don't listen to anybody. I don't respond. I say, okay, and then I show up to work, right? I mean, the only way I would quit is if I didn't show up, right? But every day I said, I'll wake up, and if I feel okay to go to work, I'll go to work. The day I quit is when I get up and I say, I can't do it anymore. And I never found myself there. Every day I woke up, I wanted to go operate. I wanted to go take care of my patients.
SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah, that's incredible.
So it was at one point, I think my final year, that, so we take these in-training exams called AppSites. And my first year I did terribly because I didn't know how to manage my time, and I was pregnant and tired and sick all the time. And so after having my first child, I learned how to manage my time and how to study. And I would study at work. I studied right before I got home, and then I would rest at home. And then I had two partners who would, study with me right after work. And so I got really good at taking these tests. And to the point where my final year, I think I got one of the best grades. And I remember I had a faculty who advised me. She was being supportive, but she was like, I don't know how you're going to do it. This is going to be impossible, right? I think she told me that my second year. And then after that, she was more supportive. I remember, we had a meeting because everybody in the program was failing. Our chairman was getting in trouble because people were not passing their boards because they weren't learning. And so she got in front of an audience, a stadium full of residents, and she said, "Guys, if Ali can do it, why can't y'all?" And it was that time when they asked me to be on this task force to help student residents, study for this test. And to me, it was always, here's a person who's told me to quit nonstop. And now, without apologizing, without acknowledging that they were wrong, coming in here asking for my time, asking me to contribute and say, hey, you're doing so well. I don't know how you're doing it, but can you teach the rest of this so our program cannot be in trouble anymore? And it was and it was just funny to me. And I was like, you know what? Alhamdulillah. I'll do. I created guidelines and whatnot to help them study. But I was like, you know what? That's all I wanted, right? So all I wanted, not only to pass, not only to get through, but to do my best.
That is just it's not even about just do your best. There are so many spaces that you fill, that you are an inspiration in so many different areas of life, or so many different types, people who identify in so many different types of ways. For you to be someone who was actively trying to be pushed out, and now we need you to help save our program, is such a result of Allah's, the manifestation of Allah's, you are literally a gift to the program, SubhanAllah. And it's because you worked so hard, of course, no doubt, you worked so hard. But it's such a gift from Allah that they were able to see that, even if they were too proud to admit that.
Right. Yeah, and I've since left the program, and I hear from one of my colleagues who's there once in a while that we went from a program that had 0 maternity leave policy to now the residents have 7 weeks of paid leave. 7 weeks of paid leave. And she messages me and she said, I know they're never going to say it's all because of you, but this would never have started if it wasn't for you. And, alhamdulillah, if others benefit from our just presence, right? And that's one of the reasons why I love social media so much. I think just knowing that there's someone out there that represents something that you want, or can be in a space where they can, make it better for the next person. Yes, I struggled through it, but you know what? It's better for those who follow me. It's better for those who come after me, and it's gonna keep getting better. I think that is so powerful, right?
Go
ahead.
No, please keep going.
No, and that's the thing. Like, I don't need a plaque or recognition to say, hey, you know, Kali did this. I don't need that. The fact that it's better for you know, young surgeons to come into a program and have children and get their training and go out into the world and contribute, that's beautiful. Alhamdulillah, that's all we can ask for.
Absolutely. And the fact that it's not about you, like Dr. Kali, it's about, you know, all the things that you represent as well. I mean, that is just like who created this change, this woman, and who you are and what you represent. I mean, that's so, it's hope. It's hope for everyone else. SubhanAllah. I would love to ask you about the messages you mentioned in the beginning, that people were telling you that you're not going to be able to maintain hijab or be a mother and be in this space. A lot of women are told, especially like you're not going to be able to get married or have a family if you go into this particular field, or you're a mother, how are you going to be able to do that and maintain this? Like, do you have advice for women who are told messages like that, and they're basically told, don't pursue, because in the future you might be a mom and there's no way you're going to be able to pursue your passions and be you know, an involved mother at the same time? What kind of advice do you have for people?
So first, I would say, you know, consider the source of that information. Right? So the people that told me that I couldn't be a surgeon and a mother were not surgeons and we're not mothers.
Okay.
Right? So, you know, it's very hard for me to take advice from someone who's never been there. Like, I wouldn't, you know, ask a non-surgeon how to treat a surgical disease. Right? Mm-hmm. So why would I listen to, and a lot of this advice comes from men, unfortunately. Actually, I don't know if you're on Twitter or not, but a medical student posted something about a PA that she was working with. She said she's interested in going into surgery, and he said, it is, yes, women can pursue, you know, high-powered fields, and they should be encouraged to, but it will be impossible for them to have a successful marriage and a successful family. And that's kind of like my trigger point. And I posted a picture of me in the operating room and me, you know, with a picture of my family. Like, it is possible.
Beautiful.
It is so absolutely possible. So the way I do my mentoring and the Taking Up Space Masterclass that I teach, I don't know if you can see that signal over there, but the Taking Up Space Masterclass that I teach focuses on things like this message, right? We get the message of, you know, don't pursue, you know, a high-powered field because you're not going to be able to have family, or pursue it, but you have to compromise, right? You have to. Yes, you can be all powerful and all and this is what a lot of women in the West have been told. This whole feminism of you can do everything. They get into these fields, and now there's a lot of, you know, papers coming out saying, oh, you know, when you delay childbearing, you know, you're going to have complications, and IVF is very expensive. As if we didn't know this. Right? Mm-hmm. Because what women in medicine and a lot of high-powered fields is they chose not to have kids because they're competing with men in these fields. So one of the things that happens is they take on these, you know, manly roles, right? Mm-hmm. And so the way I approach it is different. Like, I like being realistic. You will have a hard time. You will be discriminated against. You may not be supported as a mother, as a hijabi, or, you know, whatever other minoritized group you're in. But this is what you're going to do to overcome that. Mm-hmm. Right?
Plan. Yeah.
Yes. So you have to be like, like my favorite phrase is don't just get offended, get strategic. Mm-hmm. Like, we know there's racism in the workplace. We know discrimination is rampant. What are you going to do about it? Right. So those who are well-meaning will say, you know, no, you're going to have to compromise things that you want, like, you know, being a hijabi and being, you know, having a family. You don't want to compromise that. Therefore, limit your ambitions.
Right.
That's one camp.
Right.
The other camp is, no, you should be powerful and you should go for whatever you want, just regardless of what you have to compromise. Right. Mm-hmm. There's never an in between that says you can go for whatever you want, but you don't have to compromise on your values. These are how you enforce your values and how you work towards changing the environments that you're in. We're always led to believe that society is as it is. There's no changing. The systems are as they are. There's no changing. Right? You either fit in or you don't. And that is not the case. That is not true. That is not true. We are powerful and we can impact change in whatever space we're in.
Absolutely. Just like your example. It didn't exist. Now it exists because you made that change. So, you mentioned racism, of course, and you've so eloquently written about being a Black woman in medicine. Do you have any insight in terms of a Muslim who is, facing racism, whether she's Black or whether she, especially as a Black woman wearing hijab, but whether she's Black or whether she's experiencing some sort of discrimination and having that, like you mentioned, that trust in Allah? Do you have advice for who's experiencing that, and also keeping in mind how she can actually create change based on what she's going through?
So I think there's macro and there's micro, right? So macro is, the big systems changes, what your systems allow and don't allow. That's, I think, where we can have the biggest impact if there are, blatantly racist things being said. One of my favorite things to ask is, when people make comments and say, what makes you say that? Right? Asking a simple question, because one of the things that happens is, people get offended and then they either, remove themselves from the situation. I think that is a powerful tool. If especially in a power structure, if you're at the very bottom and there's a risk of retaliation, which is very, very real, and you speak and you risk getting retaliated against if you speak up, removing yourself from the situation and not exposing yourself to this hatred is important. But if you're in a position to say something, then the ways that I've approached it is when somebody says something, crazy, I just ask questions. So what makes you say that? Right? You're not attacking them. You're not assuming anything, right? You let them explain their ignorance and their racism. So I found that extremely, extremely powerful, right? When I was way, early in my training, I just removed myself. I had an attending yelling at me for something I did not do. I asked him a simple question. He told me to look after a patient. I said, what exactly do you want me to look for? And he just in front of everybody in a hallway, just screamed. I had another attending standing right next to him, just looking at me like, what's going on? Didn't say anything to his colleague, right? Nobody stands up in those situations. So I just turned around and walked away. I said, I got to go see a patient.
Allah.
Right?
That's so powerful. That's so powerful.
Yeah, and then I went to a bathroom and cried. But, it's these environments, especially when there's, power structures and hierarchy, it is toxic and it is brutal and it is abusive, right? So you have to find a way to deal with it, right? You either face it and address it, and I would go the route of just asking questions. What makes you say that? Oh, why do you think that is? Oh, Muslim terrorists. You think? Oh, okay. You think every Muslim is a terrorist? Tell me what you know about Islam. I've had these conversations, and it has actually led to opening up a lot of people's minds, right? And I love having these conversations and getting into the nuts and bolts of it, because I had a nurse friend back when I lived in Florida who, I was there, I think 2 years of me being there. She pulled me aside one day. She said, I just want to thank you for being open about your culture, your religion, the fact that you talk about racism, because this Thanksgiving, I spoke up in my family for the first time. Said her dad, said some of the most racist things at the dinner table, without even thinking about it. And she said, my kids were hearing this. And it never occurred to me that this was wrong until I started having those conversations with you. And she said, finally, I stood up and said, Dad, you will not talk like that in front of my children.
Subhanallah.
And that, to me, was like, mashallah.
Yes.
Right? I think, we tend to shy away from having hard conversations, right? Difficult conversations, because it's emotional. You call it, you say someone, you tell someone, hey, what you said is racist. All of a sudden, they become defensive, right? And it gets into a shouting match. I try to avoid that at all cost, right? I don't let anybody, bully me and be disrespectful, right? But at the same time, especially if they're open to it, I'll enlighten them with a conversation and simple questions. Why do you say that? Or they make, a comment about a patient who maybe, like biases and stereotypes. A Black person comes in and they're in pain, legitimately. They assume, this patient is like, they're pain seeking, they're drug addicts.
Oh my God.
How do you know? Did you talk to the patient? Did you ask them? No, they just look like it. What does it look like? Is it their skin color? Is it because they're Black? Right? I think, digging into people's, comments and biases, I think for me at least, has revealed a lot more and has changed a lot more people. I mean, it could be anything. Like we were calling for another physician to come up to the ICU, and it was taking them a while, and it was someone who was a little bit more heavy fit. And, one of the nurses was like, it's going to take them a while. And I said, what do you mean? Right? Why is it going to take her a while? And like, oh, no, she's just very slow at what she does, and she likes to take her time.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like, they find a way to but I personally try and check all the comments that are made in my presence. And I think it opens up for more dialogue. And when we go to the macro level, that's micro, right?
Yeah.
When we get to the macro level and we say, you know what, we have patients who are racists and are calling our physicians and nurses names. We need to have a policy to protect our staff. Right? Patients attack, patients hit, patients, threaten.
Wow.
Right? And the hospital views it as, they're really like, they see them as customers or, people who are paying. So the customers is always right. Right? We change those policies and say, no, they're not. Racism will not be tolerated. Abuse and disrespect will not be tolerated. Discrimination will not be tolerated. So when we have those conversations, at the macro level, we can make big changes on a macro level.
The policy changes, absolutely. SubhanAllah, and that just impacts so much. SubhanAllah. How have you been in situations where you've asked these questions and people have responded and maybe they backtrack, maybe they explain, maybe they realize that they're wrong. But I'm sure there have been, or I'm not sure, I'm guessing there might have been experiences where someone is just like, okay, I'm not going to interact with you anymore because these are my views and I don't want to change. How do you deal with that?
Oh, I've had a lot of those. And I feel like when people show you who they are, believe them, right? And I would rather know where someone stands than always be thinking, or assuming, right? So if I bring up those questions or those topics and people shut down and they don't want to talk about it, then I know where they stand, right? They've revealed themselves. The fact that they're not willing to openly talk about it and state their, deeply held beliefs tells me a lot, right? So in those situations, I'm happy not to interact, right? There's a tendency to think that, this whole assimilation, fitting in, that we're just like everybody's on the same page, where we all hold the same beliefs, we treat patients the same regardless of skin color, regardless of, racial background or ethnicity or religion. I think a lot of those are signs of like white supremacy ideology where, we don't see color. Does that mean does that mean you don't see me because I'm colored, right? I have color. There's like a spectrum of races and ethnicities and religions. You know, when people say, I don't see that, that means they refuse to acknowledge that you're different, right? There's nothing wrong with difference. We should be appreciating and celebrating our differences and knowing, you know, what our different needs are. And so when people say, I don't see color, you know, sometimes I feel like, you know, they're beyond a conversation. They're set in their ways and they're set in their ideologies. And a lot of, you know, the people that I work with in the field of surgery altogether, you know, you walk into our lounge, you know, Fox News is blasting, right? They talk a lot about politics, and it's all, you know, in support of, you know, Republicans and that ideology of, you know, only if you guys worked harder.
Right.
Only if you guys worked harder, you know, we got where we were because we worked hard. Only if you worked harder, as if we're not on a different playing field.
Right. Exactly. Just the blind, complete, the intentional ignorance.
Yep.
Is just so, I love what you said. I'm happy not to interact with them. I love that. It's like, I don't need to interact with you.
No,
you are a disability.
No, absolutely not. Right? I mean, I've interacted with people that, you know, we've had completely different ideologies, right? When it comes to patient care, we will work together. We'll do what's in the best interest of our patients. After that, we're not going to be friends.
And we have to be. I love that.
No, absolutely not.
We have a question, Dr. Qali. Can you talk about the lens when the retaliation is evident and you reported it and no one does anything? What do you?
So this is one of those tough situations where this happens so often and so frequently, and so few people talk about it that, you know, I find it very, very hard to tell people to report.
Wow. Subhanallah.
Because when you report, that's when you get a target on your back.
Subhanallah.
And this has been documented in our medicine literature, and I've seen it firsthand. And so the way I advise students and trainees is how egregious is what you're reporting, right? Is it words that are said? Is it, you know, someone making you feel uncomfortable? Does it rise to the level of abuse, like physical abuse, sexual harassment? You know, in that case, document, keep a record, whether it's an email chain, send an email to yourself, a private email, you know, get a journal, write everything down, get evidence, get witnesses, people who are there to corroborate your side, right? Your side of the story. And when you have evidence to back you up, then report. Because what happens is the people that are reported against, the reason nothing happens is because we're in a capitalist society, right? A lot of these people are in high power positions. A lot of them bring money to their institutions. Right? So there is very little incentive for an organization to get rid of somebody who brings them money, right? Who does a lot for the university, for a student or a trainee.
Right. I can see that.
So it's easy for them to say, how do you know? Is that what they meant? They might have said this, but, you know, how do you know they meant it in a bad way, right? If you're saying they harassed you or they assaulted you, where's the evidence? Is there a camera? Right? Is there a video of it?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So
as the victim, you are gaslit.
Yes.
You are gaslit to believe, you know, to the point where you're made to feel crazy. Like, did this even happen? Right? So I've had that happen to me when I was a second year, where an attending, like with his knuckles, knocked on my forehead. And I didn't report because I had the whole hijab thing, the pregnancy thing, getting kicked out. I said, if I, you know, raise my voice, I know it's going to be a push to get me out. So I kept it to myself. he kept doing it to other residents. And when I was a fourth year, I had a resident come to me and tell me, that he's been rough with her as well. So it was her story. I could not keep it. I could make the decision not to report. So I reported it. And I said, what are her options? Like, she would like, she's hurt. She would like to take action. And the leader of the program said, it's a waste of her time. It's like a goldfish going up against a shark.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
Right? So they know how the system is structured, and they know who they're going to side with, right? The shark is the, dozens of lawyers that they have. And that person is going to support that attending, right? And the institution. And you're basically a goldfish.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of people just for reporting get kicked out, right, and get blackballed from even practicing any medicine. So what I would do is, if you must report, and I think if it's egregious enough, you have to report, get your ducks in a row. Document everything, every interaction documented. Have a little journal. Get witnesses, and when you report, make sure you have evidence with you.
Okay. SubhanAllah. The fact that you have to decide whether to report or whether to stay safe in your position speaks so much to the structural oppression and racism that exists in this aspect.
It drives me insane. So a lot of students are anonymous on Twitter, and they'll report things that they've experienced, and everybody's go-to suggestion is, you should go to HR, report to HR. HR does not work for you. HR works to protect the name and reputation of the institution.
Right.
That's the whole point of HR, right? They will side with the perpetrators and find a way to make the institution look good.
SubhanAllah.
So don't report to HR. Find out, there's like an ombudsman or something like that in a lot of these institutions. Find out who that person is, right? Have conversations with them and say, hey, if these things were going on, how would I go about it? How would I report? Right? Get to know people, make connections, network. That's how you get ahead.
Absolutely. SubhanAllah. Thank you. That was so powerful, and a powerful ending to an extremely powerful conversation. How do people listen to your podcast, take courses with you, get in touch with the work that you do? How do they follow you?
All right. So I have a lot of platforms on social media. So I'm on Twitter at Hussein1. I'm on Instagram.
Would you mind spelling it out? So if someone is listening to this, they can just write it out.
Okay. So it's at QAALI HUSSEIN 1, the number 1, and that's Twitter. Dr. Ali Hussein, like DRQAALI HUSSEIN on Instagram and Facebook. If you send me, a DM, either on Twitter or Instagram, I usually reply. My website is QAALIHUSSEIN.com. And I am enrolling in my Defiance Academy, taking up Space Master class. I'm going to have some workshops coming up soon. I'm, designing a course on leadership, right? I don't want us to just come to the table, pull up, a folding chair and make room for ourselves. I want us to be at the head of that table, leading the changes that we need, right? So I teach, how to not only get through these systems and thrive and maintain, your sanity and your dignity and all of who you are, but to get in and be a leader in your space and advocate for yourselves and advocate for others and work towards negotiating those changes that you need. And so I will be enrolling in those soon, inshallah. And so you can sign up for them on my website.
Allah. And I think, mashallah, a lot of people want to do that. There were so many comments of sisters saying, this is so inspiring. You're so inspiring. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for your time. You have given so many of us, not just hope and inspiration, but really like a feeling of trusting in Allah is powerful, and it will get me through everything that I'm facing with His power. Putting that into my perspective and being able to use that as a compass is truly like, your stories have just, I mean, I wish that I could speak with you all day long. I am so grateful for the time that you gave us today. All of us have benefited so much from you. So many sisters said thank you so much for sharing all of your advice and your stories, and we're so inspired. You're such an example. Allah bless you so much. Thank you, Dr. Qali. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Mariam, and thank you for doing the work that you do. I love your channel. You know, the days that I'm down, I'm like, I need some Mariam. I need some Quran.
Oh, subhanAllah. I'm so honored to hear that. Oh,
thank you.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khairan. May Allah bless you and bless the work that you do and make you Allah's gift to the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much.